This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Well, I hope you're ready, and I hope you're ready to change the way that you think about video, because I have Nick Francis from Casual Films, casualfilms.com, author of the amazing and incredible book, The New Fire. And the subtitle, of course, is Harness the Power of Video for Your Business. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thank you so much for having me, David. It's fantastic to be here.
Now, you're not just some run-of-the-mill, hey, let's be a YouTube influencer. You do big corporate video for gigantic global companies like Marriott and Autodesk and Rolls-Royce and BMW and Red Bull. And so this is serious industrial commercial video, but you also have some great tips about how brands and people and companies of all sizes can harness video. Another friend of mine, and this is very on point for our topic today, another friend of mine says, well, video is the new black. Mm-hmm. Video is the new black. That if you're not doing video for your business, for your company, for yourself, for your brand, you're totally missing out. So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get into the business that you're in today, and what were some of the interesting detours along the way?
Of course. So I should just frame it a little by saying that one of the things I love about video is that the grammar remains the same, whether you're talking about a little iPhone video that you might record to share with your clients on one of your social platforms, or if you're Steven Spielberg with a massive 200, 300 person crew. And so, hopefully some of the themes we're going to talk about today will be relevant for anyone, no matter what level they're at. So yeah, we're originally based out of London. We set the company up back in 2006. I was working at BBC News as a producer, and a friend of mine and I from university said we were going to do the Mongol Rally, which is a rally for old cars from London to Mongolia, driving down through Europe, across Turkey, through all the stans, into Russia, down into Mongolia. And having this job at the BBC was great. And I didn't want to just leave it just to go and have what effectively looked like a jolly. So we said, well, let's make a series of diary films of the journey. And we pitched this to a number of large corporates. Expedia, the travel website, said, yep, we love that. And they gave us $40,000 US to go and make 15 films. And we made those films on a laptop with a camcorder. And we sort of fell into video blogging before people really even thought of the internet as a medium for video. So we came back and we thought, well, video is just such a great way to communicate online. Like, this is the way the internet has to go. And so, yeah, we set the company up, started making films for backstage videos for bands who didn't have any money, and that was not great. And then we started to realize that video could be used really effectively to recruit people. So we made some films for some recruitment marketing agencies, which then won the best work at the Recruitment Marketing Awards in London. And the company just blew up from there. So we're now London, New York, LA, San Francisco, but we work all over the world. We've shot films in 45 different countries, translated into 35 different languages. So, yeah, it's been an adventure.
That is super impressive. Tell me, when you started going after some of these larger corporate clients, because, really, these are global marquee brand names that everyone around the world would recognize. How did you get in? You're a small entrepreneurial company. Even today, perhaps, you might be categorized as small, truly expert, truly boutique, very, very skilled, no doubt about that. But you would think, these companies have global ad agencies that have gigantic film crews and video, and we're not going to compete with Saatchi and Saatchi. We're not going to compete with, these global, huge, ad firms and PR firms. But obviously you do, and you win. So how did you first start to crack the code on landing these large corporate clients?
Sure. So I think it's a couple of different things are happening. And this is kind of one of the things I wanted to write about in the book, is this idea that the prevalence of technology and accessibility of technology like iPhones and digital SLRs and editing software has democratized video. So basically anyone can make films. And, obviously now this seems far more obvious, but back then it really wasn't. And I think in the same way that the internet has really driven this real sort of disintermediation of sort of disempowering the middleman. And it's done it, obviously in the hotel industry, it's done it in the taxi industry, almost every industry. It's sort of like it's reduced the value of the middleman. And, these brands said, well, you know what? We can go to an outfit like Casual Films, and, there are thousands of other companies like us out there, not quite as sparkly, but there are thousands out there. And why not communicate directly with the people who are actually going to be holding the cameras, who are coming up with the creative ideas? And I think a lot of the agencies that we work with or have worked with in the past, some of them have been fantastic, but a lot of them would just sort of pass the work directly on to us. So they get a brief from the client and then go, oh, this is a brief we've got here. Can you make it? And then they might only pass over 20% of the budget to us. And the rest of it would go down as sort of creative direction time and account management time. And that sort of inefficiency in any financial system is only ever going to have a very limited shelf life. And so, brands have realized that they can go directly to the producers who are generating so much of the value and get just as good a product. And given the volume of content that brands need to be communicating with now and the immediacy of it, the pace at which they need to be iterating on the content, it just doesn't really fit the traditional kind of heavyweight agency model. So, the funny thing is that yes, they might be really glossy brand names, but ultimately, once you've done work for sort of similar brands, it kind of gives them a degree of confidence in who you are. And ultimately, they're all just people. And if you can reach out to people, I think when we first set the company up, we put a lot of effort into, it was quite casual, fittingly in a way. We were two friends from uni. It was almost like a film club for the first few years. As long as we didn't spend 20 grand on the film, then it's probably okay. And so we massively overinvested in the work, which then meant we had lots of really good case studies that we could share. And the business went from there. And kind of, over the last 7 or 8 years or so, we've really professionalized and worked on, what's our production process and what makes us special, and why should a client come to us and spend 20, 30, 40, 50,000 when they could just, ultimately use their iPhone and shoot it for free or nearly free.
Now, what's interesting, and both on your website and in your book, the process that you use to help your clients think through a video asset. I mean, even from what's the purpose of the video? Who's the audience for the video? What's the ultimate outcome? Why are we creating this video? Right? So these are things that you would think they already have dialed in with their marketing, but maybe they don't. But however, people think, oh, we need some smart guys and gals behind the camera so that when we start to turn the cameras on, it looks good. But there's a whole bunch of questions and strategic decisions way before we turn the cameras on. How do you prepare a client? Talk about the brief process that you mentioned both on the website and in your fantastic book. How do we prepare either a video strategy, or even if we're shooting one video with one specific purpose, what are the steps and what are some of the highlights of that brief document that you recommend we create?
Absolutely. So one of the challenges with video being so prevalent now is that it's very easy just to pick your phone up or pick a camera up or ring up a production company and say, hey, I just want to make this film. And the number of films that we've made over the years where you get to the end of the process and some sort of senior stakeholder comes along and sees what's been created and they go, hang on a second, should we be saying that? Why are we saying, hang on? And then you have this sort of meltdown. It's like, well, why are we making this film? And so I think before you pick up a camera, certainly, before you pick up a phone, you need to think about what is the outcome that you're trying to drive. So is it people signing up on your website? Is it getting more people to come to your event? Is it recruiting more tech-savvy people in, the Midwest? Like, what is it specifically? And then who are the people you have to reach to drive that action? And then what is their frame of reference, like culturally? Basically, where are they at in their heads? Where are they at physically? And how can you reach them? And so it's trying to boil it down. And I think, we always say, like, a great film, a great output comes from a really great brief. And it can be hard, and it's always easier to write some stuff, get someone to shoot something, and then feed back on it. And then you kind of evolve your way to a decent outcome. but that is a far more expensive and painful way of doing it than actually sitting down and really putting the work in up front.
Yes, for sure. Well, and I always tell people, and this is true with every marketing tool and every marketing strategy, that tactics without a strategy is just noise. And you're never going to hit the mark. You're never going to get to the outcome. So I'm sure you've had this experience, because I know I've had it with various other sorts of things. People say, Nick, that was a great video. What was the filter that you used? Exactly what camera do you use? What kind of lighting rig was that? And you're like, you're asking the completely wrong question.
Yeah.
The camera did not make the video great. The lighting did not make the video great. The strategy and the execution of that strategy is what made the video great. It's like asking Stephen King, what kind of pen do you use? Doesn't matter. You can give him a piece of chalk and he would write a multi-million best-selling book because he knows how to write.
Yes.
So speaking of knowing how to write, how do we know how to film? So we're doing our iPhone, or even being an educated consumer. So let's say a big brand comes to you. How do we get up to speed to be an educated consumer and an educated partner with our video production team?
It's a really interesting question. I think the first thing, and we've kind of touched on it already, but understand what you're trying to achieve is the first thing. Then understand who your target audience are. And then you want to try and boil it down. Like, great films are the ones where every element of it serves the outcome that you're trying to reach. If you think about like the great TV commercials, like, do you know the Guinness Surfers advert where there's a guy on the beach and it's good things come to those who wait, or the Apple Think Different.
Sure.
I mean, it wasn't actually Think Different at the time, but the 1984 commercial, right? And the woman, she runs in and like all the autonomous sins are there. And it's basically it's a blow against IBM. But that whole film serves the idea that Apple is going to break the mold and that people who subscribe to Apple will break the mold. And quite often we will make a film and the people who commissioned it or the people above them will say, that's great. The communication is so crisp. It's brilliant. There's all this other messaging we have to get across. Let's get all the other messaging in there. And I think if you can just be very specific about what's the one thing you're trying to communicate, what's the one action you're trying to drive, and just focus on one thing as opposed to trying to get too much information in there. And if a film's good because it's tight, like, keep it that way.
Hey, good looking. Are you currently getting paid to speak? Would you like to ramp that up? We can help. Book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team at doitmarketing.com/call, and let's see what we might do together. The call is free, but the results may be priceless. Talk a little bit about the importance of storytelling, because I know that this is one of your huge points of differentiation, is that if you get the story right, everything else in the video becomes much easier. And without a compelling story, it doesn't matter how much whiz-bang technology you put in, it's not going to land with your viewers. So give us kind of the storytelling 101 according to Nick.
Sure. So one of the reasons why the book's called The New Fire is that the way that we understand our world is so intricately involved with the evolution of fire, and the way that allowed us to we discovered a fire or tamed fire, depending on which way you look at it, about 400,000 years ago. And that allowed two things to happen. Firstly, it allowed us to get far more nutrients from our food, which allowed our brains to grow, because brains are incredibly nutrients intensive. It also lengthened the day. So before fire, when the sun goes down, you kind of have to go to bed. Whereas with fire, you have an evening. And in the evening, people who've studied the last hunter-gatherer communities have found that in the evening, people speak far more abstractly. So during the day, it's all very specific commands. So it's like, there's a tiger over there, there's a wildebeest over there, go kill the wildebeest, go get some water, do this, do that, do the other. Whereas in the evening, it's far more abstract. And it's like, so people start to construct stories. So at the same time our brains were growing, we're able to understand abstract thought, or we're growing the capacity for abstract thought. Fire gave us the time in which to use that abstract thought. And so the point of that is that our way of interpreting the world around us as human beings is tied into the development of storytelling. So this idea of like A plus B equals C, or like the source ingredients plus an action equal an outcome. That's how we understand the world in every way. And so as a communicator, as a business communicator, the more you can construct or wrap the facts that you want to communicate in that source plus action equals outcome, the more sticky it becomes. For example, saying the water in that stream will make you sick is not as memorable as Sarah drank the water from that stream last week and she's been writhing in agony ever since. And you go, okay, I won't drink the water in the stream. So maybe I'm being a little bit academic about the sort of talking around the story, but like once you add in an element of jeopardy, so it's like the source ingredients plus an action equal an outcome. Once you say a source ingredients plus an action may equal this outcome, but it may also equal another outcome, that's where it gets far more engaging for an audience. So to boil it down, let's say you are a dentist and you want to promote your dentistry. The best way that you can do that is not to say, oh, look, I can fix your teeth and make you look how beautiful your teeth will look. You go and you find someone who you have helped. And it's like, I'm a 64-year-old lady. I've always felt awkward about my smile. I've never smiled in a photo in my life because of my teeth. And now you've given me my smile and I can smile with my grandchildren. It's the same information, but by wrapping it in a narrative, it just becomes so much more heartwarming and so much more memorable.
For sure. Another part of the book I want to ask you about is thinking about the distribution platforms. And I was thinking about this because I know you do big corporate video that's often broadcast. Is there such a thing anymore as a quote unquote broadcast video? Because obviously things appear streaming, television, etc. But they almost always have to be social media friendly also, or a version or an excerpt of that. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on their Instagram account. It's going to be on Twitter. It's going to be everywhere because they socialize it, they chop it up and so forth. So has the world changed in terms of quote unquote broadcast video versus social video? And how do you see them overlapping?
So they sort of say that, traditional TV was broadcasting. So you put something on there, everyone watches it. Whereas now communicators in the online space have the opportunity to narrowcast. And so the value of the niche online is massively increased. So it doesn't matter how small your potential target audience are. If you can make it perfect for them, then you're far more likely to get traction. So, yes, there are obviously videos that go to millions and hundreds of millions and if not billions of views. But if you can just make it so that it will resonate for a certain audience, then it has far more likelihood of gaining traction with them, which kind of takes us back to talking about the brief again. It's like, who are your target audience? Like, really understand who they are, potentially talk to them and understand the things that really make them tick. And if you can make it work for them, then actually all that matters then is what platform are they on? So are they on YouTube? Are they on Pinterest? Are they on Instagram? I think you need to be more platform agnostic. Now, the chances, obviously, they'll probably be on Facebook, but, they may not. They may be on TikTok. They may be on Snapchat. You just need to understand where they are and make sure that your message is tailored perfectly to them, wherever that might be.
Yeah. What do you see? Because I know in the book you go into this a little bit about looking at the different social platforms and just some rules of thumb for things like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, your blog, your company page, your recruiting page, or your jobs page. What kind of considerations do we need to think about for each of these different platforms, or what are just some quick tips for each one?
I mean, the first thing to remember is that different pieces of content will work differently on each of the different platforms. And now some of the different platforms have got their length limits. So Instagram has, I think it's about 30 seconds. Facebook was about 3 minutes, but I think they may have changed it. But ultimately, what you want to do is you take your main video and then cut it down, and then you can put tasters out onto the different platforms. So don't try, if you've got a single, films are generally a lot shorter than they ever used to be. But, let's say you've got a 90-second output or a 2-minute output. You might want to host that on your own homepage or maybe on your YouTube page and then use the other social platforms to drive traffic back to it. So it's not necessarily a case of just put the same film on all the different platforms. Your audience may need several different touch points to convert and to really gain confidence in your brand or in who you are. And so if you can sort of, like we talk about, kind of atomizing or reversioning the content to spread it across as many platforms as possible, because ultimately your audience is so transient online, the more different places you put it, the more chance you have of hitting them and of them seeing it.
I'm going to use the V word, the V word. People, I'm sure, come to you and say, Nick, we see these big companies, they got millions and millions of views. We see these Instagram influencers, they've got tens of millions of views. We want a video that's going to go viral. Can you make us a viral video? And what's your answer? We'll unpack the question, and then I'm also curious what your answer is.
So the initial answer would be to say it's almost impossible to guarantee that a film is going to go viral. What I would do with that would be to unpack it and to take it back and say, well, actually, what do you mean by that? Because if we're just saying, well, it's this kind of holy grail where we're going to invest $5,000 and it's just going to get picked up, and all of a sudden we're going to have millions and millions of views, and our CPM is going to be off the scale. Yeah, it doesn't really work like that. It's the same with like user-generated content. So a number of our clients will say, oh, this is great. Look, we don't need to pay an external crew. We'll just give our graduate trainees a camera each to film their 3-month internship or whatever. And then we'll be able to produce a film for cheap. And user-generated content doesn't usually end up being cheaper because you have to put so much time into fixing it. Yeah, I'd say, well, where is that desire coming from? And also, just heading for like top line views, that's not necessarily what you need. To go back to, we're narrowcasting, right? So you may only need 500 people to see your, 500, 1,000, 2,000 people. So, getting 20 million, young women in South Korea to watch your video, if you're a garden center in the Midwest, it's pure vanity.
What a great episode. Wowza. Tell you what, if you want to ramp up your revenue as an expert who speaks professionally, you should really check out our free online training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Let's also talk about video advertising, because of course that's the other big thing, is that video ads on all these platforms. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing as some of the trends with video advertising on platforms like YouTube and elsewhere? Mm-hmm. And what are some do's and don'ts, or what's more important versus what might be less important when you're specifically doing a video advertisement?
Yeah, so you got to obviously hit the ground running with it. So it needs to be punchy from the outset. There is debate over whether it's best to have your logo on there from the outset, or whether you should like hold it back a little bit. I think ultimately, to give your content a nudge, so to go back to the viral question, like you don't get anything for free. Once upon a time, yes, maybe you will. You get like the Dollar Shave Club example, fantastic film, which just went gangbusters. And they said they made it for like $5,000 or something. Now, yes, once in a blue moon, that will happen. You can't plan for it. And so you do need to promote your work through programmatic advertising, which, would target people on YouTube, would target people on the other platforms. And, ultimately talking about reversioning your content and then trying to like pull them back in to watch the main content on your site or on your YouTube channel, that requires a degree of investment.
What are your recommendations for, so let's say we invest in some serious commercial video mm-hmm. assets. I'm guessing that that's not all we need. That's not the be all end all. Hey, our video is now done. We're not mm-hmm. doing any more video. Mm-hmm. If we're doing casual, pardon the pun, from casualfilms.com, casual video, employees going about their work. If you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, you walking down the hallway at your company, telling some story, sharing some success, doing some value-based concept that you're sharing with your audience. Do we need to worry as much about production values, green screen, perfect background. The women have to spend an hour in makeup, or what's the benefit of having kind of like the gritty real world, flip on the camera, don't even think about it too much, do the brief and have an idea of why you're making the video and where the video is going to live, but start doing more videos just because it's such an authentic format.
So one of the big challenges of traditional video production is that it puts artifice into the output. And what I mean by that is like, it stops it from feeling quite so authentic. And so if you've got this really genuine story, you kind of need to get out of the way. And actually, there's an example. We made a film for a big insurance company. They do auto insurance, and their insight was based on the thought that by providing auto insurance, they allow family life to happen. So if people drive around in their cars, and like people, you live your life with your family in your car, basically. They provide car insurance, which allows people to drive. Now, they spent a couple of $1 million on a big advertising agency who shot this absolutely stunning advert, like beautifully lit, with a family, going about family life. And it just felt so fake and so yucky because you just can tell. And in a way, like the $200,000 lens set that they used to shoot it made it even worse. And then they came to us as their below the line production company and said, look, this is what we want to do. And we went, well, you need to remove as much of that production as possible. So we set up a GoPro camera rig in each of the cars. We had the director and the producer, sound recordist in the car behind, and the director would just feed lines or feed discussion points to one of the parents who was sitting in the front. Two kids are sitting in the back, and they discuss going to the safari for the first time, when they first brought the baby home, and all these like really kind of cute topics. And because they're just a family and it's just genuine, and look, ultimately kids say the strangest things, it just was so warm and so engaging. And because the outputs were 30 seconds long, it just blew up on Facebook and on YouTube, to the extent that the view completion rates were so high that YouTube in London got in touch with us to say, what have you done to get these completion rates so high? And it's just honest, authentic family and getting out the way.
Right.
Get the production out the way.
Right. Totally fantastic. Well, as we're wrapping up, I do want to talk about The New Fire, which is the book. Yep. Before we turn the microphones on, we had a little quick chat about where'd you come up with this fantastic book? Tell us about the book writing process and how you're able to capture lightning in a bottle and put some fairly complex and deep thoughts about every phase and stage of the video production and video thought process in between the pages of a book. How did that come about? How did that work?
Sure. So, I've been making films for 12, 13 years, and I'd had a kid, and I was like working in a far less executive role within the company. And I kind of wanted to gather together some of my thinking and understanding about video production. I went to see a client in Switzerland, and I pitched to their whole marketing team, and they had some great stories to tell. And I was like, this is what you should be doing, this and that. And someone came up to me at the end and they said, we completely agree with you. That would be amazing. But our boss, the person who signs the checks, says, no, we need to see the logo. We need to hear, the housewife saying, I use this pet food because Fido loves it, and blah, blah, blah. All these like fed lines. And it was so where marketing and advertising was. And in a way, like the video has evolved so fast and online marketing has evolved so fast. A lot of the people in the executive suite have kind of been left behind. And so I wanted to create a book where I could give it to the people who came to me and say, look, give that to your boss, and they will then hopefully understand a bit. And so, which is why the book kind of goes into, the physiology of how video works on the mind and how it's changed. And then the second half of the book is sort of breaks it down to like, how to write a brief, how to find and tell great stories, how to distribute your work. I mean, how to use data, all sorts of stuff. So I wanted it to be as thorough as possible. The actual book writing process took about 15 months, and it sort of really ramped up towards the end. They say that when you climb Everest, you actually climb it 8 times. It's 8,400 meters. I think that's 32,000 feet in Imperial. So yeah, you go up and down it 8 times because you have to go up and leave stores and then come back down. And it was a bit like that with this, it's like 72,000 words, 70,000 words. But I sort of wrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it. And by the end of it, it was intense. I mean, I guess my only advice would be initially I just wanted to get the word count down. And it was only when I got about halfway through that I was like, actually, I need to start finishing this. It's not just word count. I need to start finishing chapters and finishing the elements. And in a way, I wish I'd kind of tried to write complete chapters a bit earlier rather than just trying to get the material into it. So, yeah, I don't know.
That's a great metaphor about climbing Everest 8 times. So you wrote the book 8 times.
Kind of, yeah.
8 times.
Yeah.
My favorite is chapter 13. Because chapter 13, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff in the book. From a marketing standpoint, I think chapter 13 is brilliant because it's choosing the right partner or agency. Yeah. And if you write the test, you get an A.
Yeah. Who knew?
Who knew? But I love that because that, of course, is setting the buying criteria for the CEOs who are reading the book.
Yeah.
They look at casual films and they go, these guys have everything Nick writes about in the book.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
How did that happen? Well, 2 final questions for you. My final question is how do people get connected and stay connected to more Nick Francis brilliance? And we'll talk about the book and the URLs and casual films and all the fun downloads that you have there. But the second to last question I'm going to ask you now, if people were to take one central concept from big picture about the use and the deployment of video in their business, in their company, what would you hope that central concept should be?
So I'm going to answer that in 2 quick parts, if I may. The first one would be talk to your clients, understand what resonates for them, understand the things about what you do that is the reason for them coming to you. It might be that you give them their time back. It might be that they can completely rely on you, whatever it is, and then find stories that align with that. And then the real high level point would be bold. A lot of people look at Apple and they go, I want to be like Apple. But nobody's willing to be Steve Jobs. And what I mean by that is you have to be uncompromising and you have to go, you know what, we're just going to try it. And the great thing about the internet is you can put stuff out there and if it works, then you can double down on it. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. You just have another go, and just find the things that work. That would be my main point.
Brilliant. Well, tell people how can they get connected to more Nick Francis, casual films, downloads, websites, URLs. Where can we send people to get some goodies?
Great. So Nick Francis Film. So LinkedIn, I'm Nick Francis Film, all one word. Connect with me on there. It'd be great to hear from you. If you want to see casual films, it's casualfilms.com. I write or edit the blog that's on there. We've been putting a lot of content up. With the coronavirus that's been going on, I think it's going to have really significant impacts in how businesses communicate. And we have been putting a lot of content on there, like how to look better on a webcam, how to shoot your own videos, animations you can do, lots of low impact, low interpersonal contact video production. So yeah, check that out. That's our Make Video Work blog. And then, beyond that, all the social platforms are just Casual Films. So yeah, get in touch.
Awesome. Nick Francis, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you so much, Dave. It's been really great to talk to you.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.